Okay, let's just dive right into this explainer. What we're talking about today is basically a biological thriller, and it is happening inside of you right this very second. It turns out your body's natural defenses and the everyday, completely normal foods you eat hold this incredible power to literally starve microscopic threats before they even know they're being attacked. It's wild. 1 billion. Just take a second and let that massive number sink in. When we think about health, we usually zoom out and look at the big picture, right? But the real battleground is actually at the microscopic cellular level. And this specific number represents something that honestly might completely shock you. Has anyone ever actually told you how many cancer cells are in the smallest tumor you can physically feel? Well, that 1 billion we just talked about, that represents the staggering number of cells already packed into a tiny 1 centimeter tumor. That's the absolute smallest lump you could realistically notice, say, if you're just doing a routine self-exam in the shower. 1 billion cells. So we're not talking about a single rogue element here, we're talking about a microscopic army. Which brings us to part 1, the invisible threat. Or as I like to think of them, the cops on the beat. Now, before you panic, you should know our bodies are constantly forming mutated cells. It's just a normal part of life. But usually our immune system acts like neighborhood cops on a beat, just tossing those rogue cells right into a microscopic paddy wagon before they cause any trouble. But when a rogue cell does manage to escape, we run into this thing called angiogenesis. This is basically the biological process where tumors selfishly recruit and hijack their own private blood supply. Without that blood supply, a tumor totally maxes out at about the size of the tip of a ballpoint pen. Why? Because our body naturally cuts off those supply lines to starve the enemy out. However, and this is a big however, listen to this number, 16,000. The terrifying reality is that when a tumor actually does manage to hijack your body's circulation, it can explode in size by 16,000 times in just 2 weeks, literally going from a harmless little pen tip to an explosive, rapidly growing threat almost overnight, just because it finally got the fuel it was looking for. The research brilliantly illustrates exactly why that explosive growth happens. As they note, the moment you allow a blood vessel to touch that cancer, it's like handing it a scuba tank and a giant bag of junk food. Suddenly, it's getting all the oxygen it desperately needs, plus the nutrients to just gorge itself. So the absolutely crucial takeaway here is this. To stop the threat, we have to prevent these rogue cells from ever getting their hands on that scuba tank. We have to cut off their oxygen and their nutrients. Let's move on to part 2, the great soy myth. It's time to dismantle a massive misconception. For years, there's been this massive urban legend claiming that eating soy feeds breast cancer. People heard that human estrogen feeds tumors, and then they learned soy contained plant-based phytoestrogens. So they connected the dots, right? But looking at the actual chemistry, they are completely different. Plant-based phytoestrogens, like the genistein found in soy, actually block human estrogen. They act exactly like Mother Nature's tamoxifen, literally knocking out the blood vessels that are trying to feed those tumors. And we have the real-world data to back this up. The Shanghai Women's Breast Cancer Study tracked 5,000 high-risk women. And the result? Those consuming the most soy saw a 30% drop in mortality and a 30% lower chance of recurrence. And listen, this wasn't just a random fluke. 14 additional clinical trials showed the exact same thing. Consuming soy consistently led to significantly lower mortality and greater survival rates, period. Okay, part 3, the armory. Let's dig into Mother Nature's dietary toolbox. When you open Mother Nature's dietary toolbox, you find these incredible, actionable foods that seriously empower your body's DNA-fixing geek squad. Tree nuts, things like walnuts, almonds, pine nuts, they actively lower your risk. Then you've got brassica vegetables, like turnips, which are absolutely packed with blood supply-cutting sulforaphanes. And berries, especially strawberries, they contain ellagic acid, which literally hit a home run in lab tests at the National Cancer Institute by violently cutting off the blood supply feeding the cancer. But what happens if the cancer actually goes into remission? Well, we have to talk about cancer stem cells. These are essentially the root cells that allow cancer to renew itself. Sadly, even after totally successful treatment, about 20% of breast cancers return within 5 years, entirely because of these sneaky stem cells. And here is a very sobering fact from the research. Modern medicine currently has absolutely 0 drugs to treat cancer stem cells. 0. So what do? Well, as this quote beautifully points out, guess what? Mother Nature already beat us to the punch. We don't have to sit around waiting for some new pharmaceutical drug to be invented because Mother Nature already provided a natural stem cell killer right there in our dietary toolbox. And that tool? It's matcha green tea. Look, when you brew regular green tea, you leave a ton of incredible cancer-starving catechins behind in the leaves. It's kind of like leaving water stuck in a squeeze sponge. But matcha has a very specific 3-step advantage. The plants are shaded for 28 days to massively boost the polyphenols. They're carefully harvested, and then the entire leaf is pulverized into a super dense powder. When you drink matcha, you're getting 100% of those polyphenols, and scientists have actually proven that these specific polyphenols can kill breast cancer stem cells. How amazing is that?
Moving on to part 4, the social hormone bacteria. Let's explore the gut-brain connection.
So, a healthy gut lowers inflammation. This is absolutely vital because inflammation acts like fat dripping on a hot summer grill. It causes these fiery flare-ups that cancer just loves to use for rapid growth. But there is a superhero bacteria called Lactobacillus reuteri that fights this. When it thrives in your gut, it literally sends text messages to your brain, triggering the release of oxytocin. Yes, oxytocin. That is the exact same feel-good social hormone released during a deep kiss or when you joyfully hug a loved one at the airport. But this feel-good bacteria doesn't just improve your mood, it does some serious heavy lifting for your physical defenses too. In lab studies with animals prone to breast cancer, simply adding Lactobacillus reuteri to their drinking water drastically reduced both the size and the incidence of breast tumors. And if that wasn't enough, in other studies, it was actually shown to double the rate of wound healing. I mean, it is just an absolute powerhouse for your immune system. Now, you're probably wondering, how do we get this into our bodies? You could use probiotic powders, sure, but historically, this bacteria is actually found in some incredibly delicious everyday foods. You can find it in authentic sourdough bread, the kind made from ancient, pinched-off starters passed down for hundreds of years. You can also find it in real, authentic blocks of Italian Parmigiano-Reggiano cheese and in high-quality, small-batch probiotic yogurts. Honestly, it's healthcare that actually tastes amazing. Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. Your body is quite literally hardwired to fight back. Your immune system, those microscopic cops on the beat, and your gut bacteria are the ultimate heroes in this biological thriller, constantly working behind the scenes to keep you safe from microscopic threats. So the question I really